This is baseball. I'm Brandon. Let's get into it. What if Major League Baseball changed its playoff format? Now, I know that they just did this, but what if they changed it again? Major League Baseball's playoffs have slowly been expanding through the years, starting in 1995 when they added the wild card team to the playoffs. This expansion created the best-of-5 series in the division round, with the winners of that series moving on and facing each other in the championship series. Major League Baseball would keep the format to 4 teams in each league making the playoffs until 2012 when they would add a second wildcard team, bumping the number up to 5 in each league that makes the playoffs. The format that was created for the second wildcard team would be adding what is known as the wildcard game. And from 2012 to 2021, you would have a 1-game playoff between your 4th and 5th seed to determine who will face the 1 seed in the division round. I loved the wildcard game. I think that it made for some of the most exciting moments and memories in Major League Baseball's postseason. I can speak to being at the 2014 American League wildcard game in Kansas City with the Royals and A's playing each other, where the Royals came from behind not once, but twice to move into the division round, carrying an 8-game winning streak into the World Series before ultimately falling to another wildcard team, San Francisco Giants. 2019 National League wildcard game, Brewers and Nationals. The Nationals were down 3-1 in the bottom of the 8th and ended up putting up 3 runs to take the lead and ultimately win. That's the same season that they went on to win the World Series. Now here's an example of where I don't think that the wild card game worked. In 2021, the Dodgers won 106 games and somehow managed to lose their division to the Giants, who won 107 games that season. The Dodgers unfortunately had to fall to become the home team in the wild card game, facing the 90-win St. Louis Cardinals. So the Dodgers were 16 games better than the Cardinals. This game was tied going into the 9th. The Dodgers hit a 2-run walk-off home run to win and advance and play the Giants in the division series, where they won. So clearly, the 2 best teams in the National League both played in the same division. One of them was not able to win 108 games because the actual winner, being the Giants, won 107 games. So the Dodgers had to go and play 1 game. Their entire phenomenal season came down to 1 game. And I don't think that that's how it should work, but I'll get to that in a minute. Now, between 2021 and 2022, Major League Baseball and the Players Union were working on a new collective bargaining agreement. With this, Major League Baseball wanted to expand the playoffs. They were pitching to go from 5 teams to 7 teams in each league. The players didn't want to have 7 teams because they wanted to still have value for the regular season. They thought if you have too many teams making the playoffs in the regular season, doesn't really matter anyway. They compromised and they expanded to having 6 teams in each league make the playoffs, creating a format that is similar to what NFL used to do, where the 1 and the 2 seed get a first round bye, and then the 4 and 5 seed play, and then the 3 and 6 seed play each other. This new format has split the baseball community, both players and fans, because baseball is a game of momentum. And if baseball is a game of momentum, is being the 1 or 2 seed, so having the first or second best record and winning a division in your league, is it really an advantage to have one of those when you're going to be sitting and resting and waiting for the new wild card series to conclude. If you look in the National League, the answer would be no, that resting is not an advantage because the 1 and 2 seed, both being the Dodgers and the Braves, were eliminated in the division round. But if you look over to the American League, the Astros and the Yankees were 1 and 2, and they both won and faced off in the championship. And Houston won and then advanced to the World Series against the Philadelphia Phillies and ultimately won the World Series. So the argument could be made that if your team's good, them having a few days off shouldn't impact them. If you're really that good, you should be able to overcome not playing for a few days. So that's currently the playoff format. There are 3 rounds now. You have the wild card round, which is just a best 2 out of 3, where the 3 seed hosts the 6 seed and the 4 seed hosts the 5 seed. And then you just move your way up the bracket if you advance. Now, I don't think that this current format is great. I think it has pros and cons, and I want to get into those. I think that the main positive is there's more teams that can make the playoffs, and that means that there are more teams that are going to be in contention for a spot down the stretch. You're going to have teams that are 7th, 8th, 9th, maybe even 10th place handling the trade deadline a little bit differently. Hey, there's a possibility that if we get hot, we can grab that 6 seed and make the playoffs, where before it was, 4 teams or 5 teams making it. If you're 7th, 8th, and 9th, you're probably selling at the deadline because odds of you making it are pretty slim. So I think that more teams being in contention late in the season is good for the sport as a whole and good for individual franchises and their fan bases. Because at the end of the day, you want to keep your fans interested in your team as long as you possibly can. And expanding the playoffs naturally should help that. Now, I don't think that you should go full NBA and have it to where 2/3 of the league make the playoffs if you include the play-in tournament that they've added over the last few years. But I do think that NBA does one thing right with their playoffs, and that is they seed based off of overall record. They don't necessarily take into account whether or not you won your division. You get seeded based off of how many wins you have. So if you want to look back at the 2021 season, where the Dodgers didn't win their division after winning 106 games, in this scenario, they still wouldn't have won their division, but they wouldn't have had to play in that wild card game. They would have been the 2 seed and avoided the wild card game. The problem with Major League Baseball seeding the playoffs based off of wins rather than winning your division or not is that the players and fans alike really value winning your division. And you should value winning a division. It's a big deal. But the argument is, well, the Dodgers in 2021 should have won more games and they wouldn't have had to do the wild card. And obviously that season is a little bit of an outlier. You don't typically have 2 teams that are just that elite. But point still stands. If you win that many games, your season shouldn't come down to having to win a wild card game. Here's why I think that Major League Baseball could potentially adopt this thought process of playoff seeding based on wins is, number one, they have changed the way that they do the schedule. So they've, in 2023, created a balanced schedule where you will face every team at least once throughout the season, where before it was, if you're in the American League, you're going to face every American League team, and then you're going to play against one National League division. Now, moving forward, that's not the case. Every team plays each other at least once, and the way that they've done this is they have significantly decreased the amount of division games that you play. So, where you were playing roughly half of your games within your own division, you're now playing 40 to 50 games inside your division. So the amount of games spent playing inside of one division are much less. So that alone makes winning your division less valuable because it's less time spent there. I think that they could get to a point where divisions don't really matter and they're kept solely for the purpose of scheduling. Now, I don't know if they would actually go and do that. I think that there would be a pretty big fight to actually make that happen. But you never know. I think another thing that is going to change in the near future is league expansion. So MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred has been open that Major League Baseball wants to add teams to its league. They're essentially just waiting on the Oakland Athletics situation and the Tampa Bay Rays situation. Well, we've already seen that Oakland A's are likely moving to Las Vegas. That's pretty much going to happen at this point. I don't see a scenario where the Athletics stay in Oakland. The Tampa Bay Rays have had some momentum recently of buyers for their team looking to relocate them. There's an investor that is pitching to have them come play in Orlando. So Oakland's situation seems like it's winding down, in the Tampa Bay Rays stadium situation or location situation seems like it's starting to get somewhere. And Rob Manfred said he was waiting for those two things to happen. So I think by 2027, 2028, that'll all be taken care of. And I would honestly think 10 years from now, we'll have 32 teams in Major League Baseball, 16 American League teams, 16 National League teams. Naturally, you will have division realignment because of that. I think at this point, when and if that happens, you're going to look at playoff format. Should we expand the playoffs? I would think that adding teams, you would naturally want to go to 7 teams or maybe even 8 teams in each league making the playoffs. And I think if you did 7 teams making the playoffs, you would just have the 1 seed getting that first round bye, and then the other 6 teams playing in the wild card round. Same format as what the NFL does now. I do think that it would almost make more sense to just go for 8 in each league. And that's to help with the argument of baseball being a game of momentum. And if you have 8 teams playing in your playoffs, you don't really need to have any teams get a first round bye because they would all have somebody to play. So I could see Major League Baseball pushing for that if the league does expand to 32 teams, which I think is pretty much inevitable at this point. But I would like to see Major League Baseball look at these types of changes eventually, where, winning your division doesn't necessarily get you that 2 seed or whatever it is, because we have some really bad divisions, a couple of really bad divisions this season. And I think if you look at the National League Central or even the American League Central, let's look at the American League Central. I think the Twins are probably going to win that, and they might win 85 games. If you look at the American League East, you might have 2 teams that win 100 games. Unfortunately, one of those 2 teams is going to have to be a wild card team because they didn't win. Should they have to go on the road against an 85 win, 88 win team? They're obviously better than them. They just, unfortunately, play in a tougher division. Now, obviously, this is all hypothetical and it would be a ways down the road because Major League Baseball is very early on in their current CBA deal with the Players Union. So we wouldn't even really be talking about any of this until 2027 anyway. This will be the second season of the current 6-team playoff format. I think last year's went really well. I know, like I said earlier, it's been a very mixed crowd on whether or not we like it. But I think it went well. And again, I'm all for more teams having a chance to win a championship, especially in a league like Major League Baseball where it's not an even playing field economically. And baseball's economics are something that we can get into another time. But I do think that this helps that situation, having an expanded playoff format. I do want to get you out of here with something that is very noteworthy, and it is, shocker, it's involving the Kansas City Royals. Earlier this week, the Kansas City Royals finally DFA'd Hunter Dozier. Hunter Dozier, former first-round pick for the Kansas City Royals, was designated for assignment this week. It's a move that has been long overdue, and the Royals finally did it. Hunter Dozier got a $25 million contract extension under Dayton Moore's leadership for having a decent season in 2019. Dayton Moore extended him before the 2021 season. And he did have a good season in 2019, but this was also a classic Dayton Moore good guy contract extension. Probably didn't deserve it, and the odds of Dozier putting up multiple seasons like he did in 2019 were slim. And the Kansas City Royals designated him for assignment today. And I think that that's a huge move for a team that has had a season that has gone wrong in about every way possible. I think they have lost the fans this season, and if there's anything that you can do that somewhat makes your fan base think that you care, DFAing Hunter Dozier will go a long way with the fans. I think that it's a positive move for them because continuously putting Hunter Dozier in your lineup pretty much said that you don't want to win. If you're putting somebody that has like a negative, he has a negative WAR. His wins above replacement is negative. If that's if that tells you anything about him, he's terrible. He's one of the worst players in the league, and the Royals finally moved on from him. And they're going to be better for it. I don't think you're going to see it immediately, but I think having a guy that is batting under 200 not in your lineup or not even on your team, that makes you a better ball club. And that's all I have. Thanks for listening. This is baseball.